Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this session. We are so excited to be here and share this space for creating solutions.
Well, the ArcRep Expectation series is something that Sherry and I got together on about a year ago, and we thought and we felt very strongly that building relationships has never been more challenging, and the ArcRep relationship has never been more important, especially in this time of change that we're going through. So thanks for joining us today as we explore ways to improve the ArcRep relationship. Sherry and I have been in a professional architectural rep relationship for over 20 years. You may find that interesting, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that. But over the past year, we really thought this would be a great program to pull together. And Sherry came up with the title ArcRep Expectations. Because I thought it was pretty interesting. She started out on her track to teach more specifiers, the incoming specifier community, how to be better specifiers. And she had a number of architectural reps dialing into her programs. So this really gave us the opportunity to go into this platform.
So for those of you who don't know me, as Casey mentioned, I've been a specifier for the last 30 years. And over the past couple, I turned my focus to educating construction teams to be more familiar with specifications. But while I've been ingrained in the specifier community, I've always had a deep appreciation for and reliance upon product reps. As a specifier, I'm tasked to know about materials and products and systems that are installed in buildings, but that would mean I'm knowledgeable in thousands of products, and that simply isn't reasonable. So I rely on manufacturers and their product reps to help me provide solutions for my clients. As Casey mentioned, I provide coaching and workshops around understanding specifications, quality assurance, and being an advocate for product representatives. The reason why this program is important to me is because as a specifier, I do value the relationships that I've built with product representatives. There's no way I can do my job without their input. Bridging the gap between what I need and what product reps know is important to the success of my projects that I'm working on. And those are critical in my expectations so that I can get information I need in a timely manner. And I want to trust and believe the product reps that I work with value my relationship with them, despite knowing if their product is actually purchased and installed on a project or not. Because as specifiers, oftentimes when I submit my 100% CD set to the architect or the client, I don't know what actually gets put on or into the building. So that's left up to the construction team within the architectural office and the construction team in the field. So to me, this is why relationships matter. And I'm going to let Casey introduce himself again.
For those of you that don't know me, my name's Casey Robb, and I've been surrounded by construction my entire life. I grew up building homes with my dad, so that gave me a really good background. My shop teacher talked me into going to college and majoring in construction technology down at Murray State University when we were the black sheep of the industrial ed program. So it was a real grassroots effort to get this program going. I got lucky and landed my first job after college with Owens Corning Fiberglass back when they had a really large contracting division for huge industrial commercial projects, power plants, refineries, and I did contract administration for those first few years out of college. And then the recession hit and I found my first unemployment situation and I had to change, I had to make some adaptations, I had to pivot. And in 1986, I became a construction product rep, went to the dark side. And since then, I've been a product rep with over 5 building product manufacturers. Also, I've participated in CSI at all levels, literally been to hundreds of CSI, AIA, and construction industry events. I've been to over 30 of their conventions. I've been to hundreds of other conferences and specifier networking events, all of which have expanded my connections with design and construction professionals. My reason why this is so important to me is because my connections with specifiers and product reps has always helped me be more successful. Today, product reps are telling me a little bit of a similar story to what they were saying in 2017 and 2018 with the advent of technology challenging our variability to connect with architects. So here we are today, post-COVID, struggling to do the same thing. And we've got some pretty interesting data that supports what we're doing. It just, it's just a struggle to get architects to respond and not getting them involved the way we used to see that happen. It seems today that the almighty time is money proverb is taken over. Everyone seems too busy to respond. And I've heard some of the top specifiers actually tell me they can't even get the architects to call them back, and actually told us to stop wasting our time. And it's just not the way it should be. Product reps and specifiers need that relationship. And I think we're seeing the result of everyone's challenge to manage time, information, and get reconnected. It's also hard to find people. So both architects and specifiers are telling me I can't seem to find a good product rep when I need them. I can't seem to find the ones that like I used to. And my favorite quote, do you know such and such at such company? I used to know X person that I trusted, and now I can't find anyone. And then finally, the comment that gets me is it just seems like more BPMs are letting the good reps go and then relying on the internet or the websites for the interaction. The ones I talk to still want good product reps and ones that can help them. And based off plenty of my own research since we emerged from the pandemic, as a consultant, we still need each other. Real connections still matter. Today, we want to explore the basics behind building those good relationships and start to help you expand your connections. So, this is our first session of our series called Arc Rep Expectations. This is a free virtual education event, and we hope to bring you more of these in the near future. But today, we're going to start off with our learning objectives, and we've got three really important ones here today that we're going to try to help you with. Number one is building those deep connections with conversation. We're going to offer you some tips on improving your conversations that I think will lead to deeper connections. Also, how to identify those disconnects where you might not be able to offer everything you need, or ways to improve those conversations and build better relationships. So, Sherry?
Yeah, we'll also put words to respect and rapport and share ways we've experienced it throughout our careers as both a professional architectural rep and as a professional specification consultant. Regarding building bridges, we'll share those little things that can make a big difference in building bridges to success and how to avoid those barriers. We're also hoping to share with you how small victories can lead to stronger long-term relationships.
Let's talk a little bit more about building respect and rapport. And first of all, we have to understand what respect really means. Respect is the recognition of the inherent value and worth of others, acknowledging their feelings, their rights, and their perspectives. It also involves treating people with kindness, with dignity, courtesy, consideration, regardless of any differences or disagreements we may have. Respect also requires that we avoid labels and slang and keeping our conversations professional. How do we show it? It's the practice of active listening. It's showing politeness and courtesy, acknowledgement of others, and using empathy and honesty and transparency and open-mindedness. We're also required to be dependable and respect the boundaries of nonverbal and both verbal and nonverbal communications. All of these are important to understand. Building respect and rapport involves continuous effort, genuine care from others and for others, creating the foundation for a positive and meaningful relationship. This practice will lead you to stronger connections, and I guarantee you longer-term relationships.
And it's a two-way street, right? It takes mutual respect for what each person does. I've been on the receiving end of comments that don't respect what I do in my role, and I suspect each of us has our own story. So how do we bridge that and gain the respect of our peers and, more importantly, our clients? It takes what Casey just said, effort and genuine care of others. So understand with confidence what you can and you can't offer, and be ready when you're called upon.
Let's talk a little bit about building a solid foundation.
I'm going to talk about how I met Casey. That's a solid foundation, right? So I met Casey at a CSI convention about 20 years ago with my mentor, Paul Simonson. I was walking the floor with Paul, and this man who now I know is Casey caught Paul in the aisle, and he said, "Hey, come over to my booth. What do you think about this?" They had obviously worked together in the past on, I don't know, who knows what, but that question, what do you think about this? That question told Paul that Casey respected him and his opinion. Just that sentence brought he and I into Casey's booth to look at his products. So there may have been a bowl of candy, maybe a pen or a ruler on their table. I don't know. But the biggest thing in that booth was giving Paul a platform for his opinion. I had barely been a specifier for 5 years, probably, and I had no idea what Casey was asking or what he was showing. You know the old saying, you don't know what you don't know. Yet first impressions do matter. And when you connect like this, it really helps break the ice. And I knew from that experience that I could rely on Casey. It may have been, I don't know, maybe he was showing me a skylight or a window that I didn't need at the time. So while it's true you don't need the information until you need it, it's still important for me as a specifier to make those connections so I know who to contact when I do need that information. And I find it hard, excuse me, I find it hard to retain all the information that's required for a single product, let alone for the entire building. So the best I can do is remember your name and your company. But really, isn't that what you want me to do? And then when I need information on your product, I know who to call, because not every product is going to be used on every project. So while you might be at the right place at the right time and hit a gold mine at a product event, that's far less likely than me thinking about you when a question comes up. I don't need to see you. I don't need an email from you every day, but I do need to remember who you are and what you represent. And I mean that both product-wise and personally.
I'd also like to share my story how I met Sherry and why we've stayed connected over the years. Um, it was the fact that Sherry had this beautiful smile. She always had this positive attitude, and she just didn't act like a traditional curmudgeon specifier. Oh my God, did I say that, Sherry? We shouldn't use that in our dialogue, should we? But that's what I was used to, was having a difficult challenge of talking to specifiers because I was intimidated. Sherry broke down that barrier really quick, and her smile and her pleasantness and her ability to connect with people was far well and above what you normally find. So we became good friends. We actually worked on the CSI board together. I was on that board 3 or 4 times in my tour of duty, and we also got to work together at some of the various events and networking events. And we became good friends and good allies, and we've always shared a lot of commonalities in that relationship. So, and the other thing is, when I go out there, I'm a bit of an extrovert, so I tend to try to meet as many people as I can at networking events. And that always made me believe, maybe falsely, that you were building a lot of connections. You were better connected. Uh, the thing that really matters, though, are you memorable and credible to help serve those you connect with? So the foundation must be really strong to survive those connections. One of the best lessons I've ever learned was in a book called Networking Like an Introvert. It's by Timothy Kablund. And basically, he explains how, with an introvert, such as most architects and specifiers, networking is much different. Over 50% of architects are introverts. I saw that post yesterday on LinkedIn. I was just flabbergasted. Introverts stay quiet, they stay out of the limelight, they seek out others only when they find out they have much more in common with you as an individual. They avoid working the crowd, they avoid gathering all the cards. They act as most of us extroverts do, they act opposite. This book will challenge you to think again on how you really network. The book actually taught me a lot about making great connections. It also explains how, if you feed and nurture those connections, they will form a deeper network with you, and that will lead to great things down the road. Let's talk a little about challenges today. Sherry?
Yeah, so 30 years ago, I had just gone out on my own as an independent specifier. So I was working from home with a set of Suites catalogs. You may all have seen them or use them as a paperweight now. That's what I used for my research. So I knew a handful of product reps from my days working in an architectural office. But once I went out on my own, the reps nearly disappeared. They couldn't find me. But I swear every manufacturer at that time was on the East Coast, because I remember getting up at odd hours in the morning from the West Coast to call those 1-800 numbers and leave messages so that I would hopefully get a return call with an answer by, 1 that afternoon. So you got the idea. No internet, no email. My challenge was finding someone to help me. So meanwhile, people in architectural offices were getting called on, having lunch presentations, binder updates. So product rep challenges for the architectural offices were the secretary or the front desk manager being a gatekeeper. So if we fast forward to COVID, I thought I finally hit the big time, right? So for the first time in all those years, I was meeting my clients over Zoom that I had been working with for years and didn't know what they even looked like. I was putting these faces to voices, which was great. The internet was suddenly overwhelmingly informative. Everyone wanted to provide an online webinar, so that was great for me. The internet is certainly seen as one of today's gatekeepers, which has caused manufacturers to do things like register for access to your documents, to certain technical documents. And I can tell you it doesn't work. I'd rather spend another 20 minutes looking for a guide spec than fill out a form. There's days. Anyway, another gatekeeper is caller ID, right? If we see who's calling, we may or may not pick it up. With fewer design offices having main office lines, we are subject to a calling system that is going to send us around a network, and you may not get a live person in the end. And if the voicemail is just a phone number, I start to wonder if my message, if anyone got it at all. So for many years, even pre-COVID, we've been watching as memberships in CSI and AIA and other associations across the country have dropped lower and lower each year. We now assume designers get their information on the web. While these challenges may feel unique, there are some similarities to what we've dealt with before, and that is you can only control your own response. I chose to get up and call the 800 number to get information. I didn't have control over if I got a call back. So maybe as a product rep, you can't control if someone calls you, but you can build a relationship so that when they do need you, it's time to show your credibility and be ready to respond. As Casey said in his recent LinkedIn post, these times they are a-changing, and they are changing again. It seems like change is the real constant.
Well, and if connections matter, as we say, how do we future-proof those connections? I think we've seen an evolution that involves right now a lot of distrust that's built up more recently through not only societal changes, but the political climate out there and just the overwhelming amount of information we're seeing. So we can't let distrust become our default setting. We have to roll that back and give people a chance. I would also say we're in a new era of information overload where it's hard to find what to believe or decide where and with whom you can find that connection or that relationship. It's harder to separate information from real knowledge today than ever before. And hopefully, we can still find good advice. These challenges make it so much more difficult to connect in a meaningful way. So now what? What do we do? Well, the good news is the AI survey called Journey to Specifications 2023, the third edition, came out late last year in 2023. And the AIA, through this survey, again verified, the input from architects still shows they have a strong desire for that arc-rep relationship. This was revealing to me too, because the next generation of younger architects are looking for trusted information in a different way. And we have to challenge ourselves to adapt and find what that different way is going to look like. They mention AI as a game changer, yet to me and to others that I'm talking to in the world of AI, it's proven that AI without adult supervision right now will lead to garbage in and garbage out, or a lot of false negatives. So we have to be able to sort that out and manage that information. Also, trade shows and specifier rep events are changing. The manufacturers are getting really savvy and finding where they spend their money and where they shouldn't. I'll mention the AIA show for the last 2 years. I've been to San Francisco, I've been to DC. They have great attendance, they have great turnout, but that engagement at the show floor is still lacking. And we've got to see how they can reinvent the trade show experience. The other thing that I'll say is the newer events, such as ArcUS or Spec Main or CSI MSR, what I call the boutique speed dating type events, are gaining popularity, and they are great for that connection, that actual one-on-one dialogue. And they're also great for networking. So I encourage you to look into more of those. And I think we're going to see more of those events tweak and change as we move forward. I especially like the last quadrant too, because from the view of the architect, they still value a knowledgeable rep. So that golden rep philosophy is still relevant today, and I can help you with that. They rely on manufacturer websites, as they say. They want easy access and simple navigation. So those are important pieces too. I think the same is true with a spec consultant, don't you, Sherry?
Oh, absolutely, Casey. Yeah, I'll research my heart out when I need to, but I would rather have a contact to ask. Sometimes I'll do a little education just to show them that I'm trying to get it and then send it on my way to and ask for feedback.
Let's talk about effective arc rep communication. I think it starts with a really good conversation. And so often I find, especially younger professionals, that have a lot of difficulty with that initial conversation. It's really an art form. And if you get really good at it, this can make all the difference in building deeper connections that want to stay in touch with you. Often it's the small things and the really kind things that we do as a result of those that make us more memorable. First impressions are also critical. And I don't care if those are digital, from LinkedIn, from Facebook, but personal and face to face situations as well. So it's still important to dress professionally. It's still important to be punctual. It's still important to be prepared and to smile and to be personable. Try your best to remember names too. People love to hear their names. And I know this has been really difficult for me, especially the older I get. Yet there are key methods to improve this skill, such as repeat their name back. Nice to meet you, Sherry, or incorporate their name naturally into a conversation if you can. And when you depart, write it down. People love hearing their name. So make those connections, make them as often as you can. Get out there because action begets action. Just start with a genuine conversation. Practice a little empathy because we're all going through a lot right now, and ask them good open-ended questions, and then listen. Find out what's most important in their life today, what's most important for them to accomplish after they come to an event with you. What are they trying to get out of that event? Then relate and share a story together. You might be from the same city. Who knows? You might be in the like the same movies. You might even have just finished the Peachtree Road Race. Who knows? But all these can become connections. And it's done one person at a time. And it's always important to follow up on what's promised. And that's another key point. Remembering your promises and keeping them, they are essential in that arc rep relationship. How
So
about the engagement?
let's talk about effective ways to engage with the architect and specifier. So I always say speak the speak. Know their world and what it means when they say things like submittal or substitution, or, when they ask what is equal, what is truly equal. Get your head around what a deadline is and what it's like to work with a team of 30 consultants making decisions that affect your decisions. Understand what they need and when. Ask what project delivery method is being used. Ask if there's a construction manager on the project. If you aren't talking about a specific project, ask them what their most common project type is. So don't ask yes or no questions. Practice that use of good, open-ended questions that encourage a continuous flow of information and exchange of ideas. Meet people, get involved with CSI, AIA, DBIA, or other organizations that your clients are involved with, and be active. Get involved and participate on a committee or join a board. Talk at the meetings and share with people who you are and what you have to offer. I'm sure you have more to offer than your job title. Just make sure people know who you are and what makes you trustworthy and credible.
And again, good conversations don't always start with an elevator pitch. I know people talk a lot about what's your elevator pitch? Well, you should have one prepared if asked, but yet avoid the pitch mentality because it throws you right into the sales bucket, and that's where they don't trust you. Remember, when dealing with architects and specifiers, they don't buy anything from you. The first principle of selling design professionals is stop trying to sell me and start trying to educate me on where you can help. Always try and ask applicable open-ended questions. I know Sherry talked about that. and then listen to their responses. Good sales rep may have rehearsed top 3 questions you want to ask to get your audience where you want them to go. That's always good prep when you do your research. However, they may want to go in a completely different direction. So just go with it, because you're there trying to help them and you're trying to support their cause. With a specifier, it's going to be more technical and less design focused than it would be with an architect. Always know your products and then try your best to find out how you might be able to help them. Be genuine and focus on their needs. And at the end of the day, you should always want to help them succeed.
For sure. And get certified in your particular field, such as CSI, get your CDT, build credibility and use your certifications and references to your advantage. Be a resource for information that you're not expert in, so you can be able to suggest who your clients can contact for their solutions outside the particular area you serve. Casey, let's talk a little bit more about active listening.
Well, I love this next slide by Stephen Covey. I give him full credit. When you practice good listening skills, you must listen with the intent to listen. And as most people do, especially us extroverts, we listen with the intent to respond. And sometimes we actually respond before we should. So when you do that, you miss a lot of the important details and the information that you really need to care about. So remember to pause after they talk. Sometimes it helps rephrase what you thought you just heard and say it back to them as a question. So it gives you the chance to respond, your brain a chance to think in terms of what is important to your audience. And remember this, remember what Dr. Phil taught me a long time ago. God gave us 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth for a reason. Use them in proportion.
Well, one of the most important principles of active listening is to concentrate your focus on the task of listening to and understanding what you're being told. So as Casey mentioned, you've got your top questions, but try not to have those in mind. Wait for your audience to finish talking so you can ask your question. Your question should be based on what you heard, not what you already want to ask. So in your conversation, you should spend 80% of the time listening and 20% of the time talking. Tell them a story. People remember stories better than facts. Leave them laughing, leave them with a memory. And then when they hang up, what is their takeaway from the time that they spent with you?
Let's talk about building bridges and avoiding barriers. These barriers can sometimes get in the way of a good conversation, even if you're trying your best. And, just by nature, some architects may view you as just another sales rep or a vendor, especially if you've got sales on your card. It can kind of be a turnoff. So be careful of using those labels. This can be frustrating and hard to deal with. And this happens because most sales reps, I'd say 80% of them who call on architects as specifiers, are just trying to hard sell their products. And that's really not what it's all about. Doing your homework and understanding what the audience needs is critical. And sometimes they just get tired of hearing from you until they need you. They'll respond when they need you. Don't take it personally.
Definitely. So they're just simply may not be ready for your offering. So remember, again, we don't need your product on every project. So take that opportunity to build a relationship and touch on your product to plant the seed. Also, don't talk over your audience. Build bridges to success. Offer them what they need to solve their issues and be there when they need you.
You also want to watch out for the pitfalls in a conversation. I say pitfalls because you may think you're being genuine, yet if they don't feel it, or if you are not totally focused on them, they'll notice. And that's when those little trust breakdowns happen. And they can lead to an initial impression that's not healthy. This also happened to me one time, and I'll share this story just out of courtesy. It was the first time I was at a big CSI convention. I think I was in Indianapolis, and I was meeting one of those CSI rock star specifiers for the first time. I'd heard a lot about him, and I had that moment where we walk up, shake hands, how you doing? But the conversation quickly turned into all about him and his story and his way. And again, here I am, that extrovert that is thinking ahead, trying to figure out where that conversation is going to go. As we do, I lost interest. And then I looked past his right ear, only to notice someone else in the crowd back in the room that I'd been trying to meet with for, again, some time. So I was in a bit of a hurry to move this forward. And guess what? He caught me looking over his shoulder. I lost eye contact and it was a dead giveaway. So he actually asked me if there was a fire going on in the corner of the room. And it took some explanation to get back on track, but I did. And the lesson was learned quickly. Don't lose interest, especially when you're making that first impression. It happens.
Yeah, and let's talk about cell phones. There is a reason they are banning cell phones in the classroom, and maybe we need to consider doing the same in the boardrooms. Don't let the cell phone distract you from your conversations. Put them away, turn them off, and please don't let them just buzz in your pocket. They're just going to distract you from the conversation, and everyone else is going to notice your distraction. Let's use this as a segue into building connections with conversations. An activity that we still see used today is the good old icebreaker. Don't let the first question be, so what do you do? Or where do you work? We want to try to move the conversation off the job and focus on the person. Show interest in who the person is. That removes them as a sales target and puts them at more ease. So find common interests. Maybe they have kids, maybe they don't. What is the most interesting place they've ever traveled? Where are they planning to travel? Make the question about what they, don't make the question about what they do. Avoid having them to ask you. So make the conversation about them, let them talk. You may be surprised how much you learn just by listening. And in return, they'll feel valued. I like to build on these strategies: good conversations, active listening, finding out what others are interested in, and putting yourself in their perspective.
Wow, Sherry, this sounds a lot like How to Win Friends and Influence People. I remember a book by Dale Carnegie that was quite an interesting read as I was getting started in this role. I'll tell you what, though, building trust and making great connections has never been more challenging. I think you'll all agree. But I hope today we've shared some secrets of our success that will help you expand your connections through better ARC rep relationships. I know for a fact that after 20 years of our professional connection, Sherry and I still appreciate the camaraderie, the coaching, the counsel that we share with each other. And that's why we thought it'd be great to get together and do these kind of sessions. I try to emulate that same approach with others all the time that I'm working with. And I find it works best when they work with you more often and nurture, and more often you're nurturing those connections than not. When you nurture those connections and you give back expecting nothing in return to help them succeed, it becomes contagious. And others will want to connect with you, and they connect with people who genuinely help others to be more successful.
So creating great relationships and deeper connections are the secrets to ARC rep success in business today. Before we let you go or open this for more discussion, I want to circle back to where Casey mentioned how presentations to specifiers are different from those to architects, and I obviously agree. If you haven't already presented to a group of specifiers, I would highly encourage it. And I would love to set up a presentation for you to our Northwest Share Group, Specifier Share Group. So please reach out to me and I would love to get you on the calendar.
And again, stay tuned this fall. We're going to try to help you build those trusted relationships. We're going to do that our next session on sharing some secrets to recognize the trusted advisor and the secret sauce to their success and how these can stick and help you be better at what you do. So thanks again for your time today. We'd love for you to stick around, open up the lines here and talk with us about what you think and how you feel this went.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording and open it up.